You didn't go through medical school and residency to become your practice's help desk, but that's exactly what happened. Right now, somewhere between the prior auth calls and the no-show pile and the cosmetic consult that fell through the cracks, you are the system. Your head is the filing cabinet. Your phone is the escalation path. And if you take a week off, the whole thing wobbles. Here's what that costs you. Dermatology no-show rates run 12 to 30%. Each missed slot is around $200 gone. Prior authorization chews through 3.5 hours of staff time every single day, and denial rates in derm run 3 times the national norm. That's not a staffing problem, that's a documentation problem, and you're living inside it. In the next 12 minutes, here's exactly what we're covering. 1. The real reason a dermatology practice breaks the moment the owner steps back. 2. 5 documented playbooks that fix the actual bottlenecks: intake, cosmetic consults, prior auth, charting, and no-shows. 3. Exactly how to build each one yourself and why most practice owners end up not wanting to. I'm Kevin. I work with Sulum. Here's what most people do when the practice gets too complicated. They write things down, they make a binder, they call it an SOP manual, they put it in a drawer, and 6 months later, the practice runs exactly the same way it did before, because the only person who actually knows how things work is still the one doing them. That's the villain here, not the lack of documentation, the belief that a binder is a system. A binder nobody opens is not a system. A document sitting in Google Drive with a last edited 2021 timestamp is not a system. The thing that tells you what happens when a prior auth gets denied on a Mo's case in not specific sequence, with those specific people doing those specific steps, that's a system. And here's the part nobody says out loud. Most owners don't have a documentation problem. They have a bottleneck problem. The knowledge is locked in 1 or 2 people, usually the owner, sometimes a veteran front desk person who's been there 12 years. When they leave or get sick or take a week off, the practice finds out exactly how fragile it is. 40% of dermatology practices hit this wall when they try to add a third provider or open a second location, not because the clinical work is too hard to scale, because the operations are unwritten. The fix is not writing more documents. The fix is a documented process that somebody else runs. If you're curious whether a VSA fits your business, the link's in the description. It's just a conversation. The person who fixes this has a name, a VSA, a virtual systems architect. Not a regular virtual assistant, not a bot, not someone you hand tasks to and hope for the best. Here's how it works. You record yourself doing the task once. The VSA watches the recording and turns it into a word-for-word SOP with screenshots. Then the VSA runs it. Every week, every day, without you touching it. That's the model. Record and delegate. And here's what it doesn't do. It doesn't touch your exam room. It doesn't make clinical decisions. It doesn't write chart notes or manage your prescriptions. It systematizes everything around your clinical judgment, not the medicine itself. The front desk, the prior auth workflow, the cosmetic consult follow-up, the billing edit queue, the recall cadence, all of that can be documented and run by someone who isn't you and isn't a veteran employee whose departure would set you back 3 months. That's what a VSA does. That's the model. Now let's build the 5 playbooks. The first playbook is patient intake and rooming. This is the one where tribal knowledge lives hardest. Every medical assistant knows how to room a patient the way they were trained by the person before them, not the right way, not your way, the way it got passed down. Here's what a real intake SOP covers. Insurance verification before the appointment, history collection with specific fields required before the patient reaches the room, a clean handoff checklist from front desk to clinical that tells the medical assistant exactly what's confirmed and what's missing. If you're building this yourself, you'd use a tool like Google Docs or Trainual. You write out every step from appointment confirmation to the moment the provider walks in. Realistic build time is 4 to 6 hours for the first version. Weekly upkeep is about 30 minutes reviewing flagged errors in the handoff. The honest friction point, it only works if every medical assistant uses the same form every time. The first week someone freehand rooms a patient, the system starts decaying. That is doable. The question is whether you want to be the one running it every week. The second playbook is the cosmetic consults to booking workflow. This is the money workflow, and it's where most derm practices leak the most revenue they don't see. A cosmetic consult has a completely different psychology than a medical visit. The patient came in curious. Maybe they're interested. Maybe they need follow-up. Maybe they need financing information or a specific treatment plan before they commit. If your front desk doesn't have a documented sequence for every step after the consult, you're relying on whoever happened to be working that day to follow up or not. Here's the DIY version. You build a 5-stage checklist: consult completed, consent documented, treatment plan in the chart, payment or deposit collected, rebooking scheduled or follow-up triggered at a specific interval. You put this in a CRM or a simple spreadsheet with a date-stamped column for each stage. Build time is 1 day. Weekly upkeep is roughly an hour auditing the open consults that haven't moved. The friction point here is real. Cosmetic patients are different from medical patients. They're shopping. They shop slowly. A follow-up sequence that feels pushy loses them. Too soft and they forget. The cadence matters, and someone has to own it. That is doable. The question is whether you want to be the one running it every week. If what we've been talking about sounds like your situation, there's a link in the description to book a free call with my team. No pitch, we just talk about your business, what's not working, and whether a VSA is actually the right fit. If it's not, we'll tell you that too. The third playbook is prior authorization and denial appeals. This one has numbers attached to it. Around 420 prior auth requests per year for an average derm practice, 3.5 hours of staff time per day, $40,000 a year in staff cost, and a 51% denial rate on complex cases. That's not bad luck, that's a missing system. The DIY version looks like this. You build a tracker with columns for submission date, payer, procedure, status, follow-up date, and appeal deadline. You set a 14-day follow-up trigger so nothing ages out. You document the appeal letter templates for your most common denial codes, and you train one person to own the queue. Tool: a spreadsheet works. A proper HIPAA-compliant task management tool works better. Build time is 1 week to set it up and populate your most common denial categories. Weekly upkeep is 4 to 6 hours to work the queue. The honest friction point: payer rules change. Insurance companies update their prior auth requirements without telling you. The person who owns this has to stay current, and when that person leaves, everything they know leaves with them unless it's written down. That is doable. The question is whether you want to be the one running it every week. The fourth playbook is charting and coding standards. Here's a number. Providers spend 36 minutes charting for every 30 minutes of care, more time documenting than treating. And the single biggest denial category in dermatology is modifier misuse. Modifier 25, modifier 59. Used wrong or not documented to support them, claims get kicked back. Practices leak $17,000 to $60,000 per provider per month from billing gaps. That's not a billing department problem, that's a documentation problem that starts in the exam room. The DIY version is a set of procedure-specific chart note templates, one per common CPT code. Each template includes the documentation required to support that code, the modifiers that apply, and a simple self-audit checklist the provider runs before signing the note. Build time is 2 to 3 days working with your biller to map your top 20 codes. Weekly upkeep is 30 minutes reviewing flagged claims and updating the templates when rules change. Honest friction: this one requires clinical buy-in. If the provider hates the templates, they ignore them. The system only works if the provider trusts that it saves time, and it does, but you have to show that first. That is doable. The question is whether you want to be the one running it every week. The fourth playbook is no-show reduction and recall. Back to the numbers. 12 to 30% no-show rate, $200 a slot. Wait times of 5 to 6 weeks, which means when someone no-shows, that slot doesn't get filled because there's no system watching the wait list. The recall piece matters as much as the no-show piece.
Annual skin checks, cosmetic touch-ups at the 12-week mark, patients who came in once and fell off the radar. That's revenue sitting in your own database that you're not recapturing. The DIY version uses your existing practice management software plus a simple reminder cadence, 7-day confirmation, 2-day reminder, morning of text, a waitlist backfill trigger that goes to the first 3 people on the list the moment a cancellation comes in. Recall gets its own separate sequence, 12-month trigger for annual checks, 90-day trigger for cosmetic follow-ups. Build time is 1 week setting up the automations and writing the message templates. Weekly upkeep is an hour reviewing the queue and the waitlist fill rate. Friction point. The automation only helps if the templates don't feel robotic. Patients in a dermatology practice want to feel like they're remembered, not mass messaged. Someone has to review and personalize the high-value ones. That is doable. The question is whether you want to be the one running it every week. So now you've got 5 playbooks. You know what they look like, you know what it takes to build them. Here's what most practice owners tell themselves at this point. I'll get to it. I'll have someone on staff handle it. Once things slow down, I'll document everything. Things don't slow down. Staff turnover in medical assisting is the top churn category in the whole practice. The MGMA flagged it as the biggest operational risk for practices their size. Every time a veteran front desk person leaves, they take the unwritten version of your system with them, and the next hire starts from zero. A VSA doesn't replace your clinical team. It documents and runs the operations around them. Record-and-Delegate, you record the task once, the VSA builds the SOP, and then the VSA runs it. Every week. Sulum has placed VSAs across 40-plus industries, healthcare practices, regulated offices, multi-location groups. The model works because the VSA is building the system while doing the work. There's no separate documentation project. It happens in real time, and the cost is roughly half what an in-house hire runs. 97% of VSAs placed by Sulum are still with their clients after a year. 98% of clients renew. The average client reclaims 20 to 30 hours a week. If you're at the point where you know something has to change, book a call. It's free. You talk to someone on my team, not a bot, not a form. You tell them what's going on in your business. They'll be straight with you about whether a VSA makes sense for where you are right now. If it does, you'll hear what that looks like and what it costs. If it doesn't, you'll know that too, and you're not out anything. The link's in the description. Just book it. And if this was useful, hit subscribe. We put out one of these every week. There are 5 systems in your practice that are currently running on memory and good intentions: the schedule, the cosmetic pipeline, the prior off queue, the chart documentation, the recall cadence. Every one of them can be built into a procedure someone else runs. You just need the right person running it. That's it. I'll see you in the next one.